Distinguished participants, greetings to all of you in Geneva. In March 2025, the Tokyo District Court under the Civil Code ordered the dissolution of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, formerly known as Unification Church. Since this unprecedented decision, I am deeply concerned. The order lacks a constitutional legal basis and clearly violates Japan's obligations under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. Such measure endangers not only one minority faith, but also others, because injustice against one community always threatens others. The ruling will have its implications for religious freedom in Japan. The decision is based on questionable evidence and accusations. It lacks substantive foundation and appears to have been driven more by political motives than by law. What in particular troubles me about this ruling? The court's decision is arbitrary, unconstitutional, and unlawful. It violates basic principles of due process. For example, the hearings have been conducted behind closed doors. Article 81 of the Religious Corporations Act allows dissolution only when an organization commits illegal acts that seriously harm public welfare. Yet the Tokyo District Court expanded this to include 32 civil cases spanning 40 years involving former members. The Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology even changed its interpretation of the law in order to request dissolution, something unprecedented. Furthermore, missionary activity and donations were judged to violate social norms and social fairness. But these concepts are far too vague, opening the door to arbitrary use of state and judicial power. The United Nations Human Rights Committee has already recommended that Japan refrain from restricting religious freedom on the basis of public welfare. Article 18 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights does not allow such restrictions. On the contrary, states are obliged to protect minority religions against hostility from dominant groups. Instead, Japan tolerated forced deprogramming by Protestant pastors. Many plaintiffs in this case were themselves subjected to coercion and confinement. Even worse, the Tokyo District Court adopted the unscientific mind control theory, assuming victimhood without evidence. This is proof of bias and arbitrariness. Legitimate courts must not be swayed by political pressure or media campaigns. The future of Japanese democracy depends on transparency, accountability, respect for human dignity, and the protection of fair justice for all. Politically, I must say that the movement against the Family Federation has roots in the Japanese Communist Party's activities decades ago. Marxist atheism lies at the root of this long-standing hostility. Such ideology often inspires radical attempts to exclude faith in God and suppress religion, because religion liberates people from the worship of secular values and authoritarian state power. I know this from my experience. I lived half of my life under communist dictatorship in Czechoslovakia. My own uncle Jan was killed by the secret police. The regime sought to crush both historic and new religions through many forms of coercion, but it ultimately failed and then peacefully collapsed in 1989. In Slovakia, the main force behind the peaceful resistance and the fight for freedom was the Christian community, especially the Catholic Church and dissent. If the district court decision is confirmed, it will damage Japan's image and credibility as a democracy and may endanger other minority religions. including smaller and newer groups, such as Jehovah's Witnesses. Japan should learn from the harm caused worldwide by state-imposed ideologies and religious oppression, which have often led to deep internal divisions. The state exists to serve all citizens, not just the majority or a favored group. Ladies and gentlemen, religious freedom is a litmus test for all human rights. Why? Freedom of religion is inseparable from freedom of thought and conscience. It belongs to everyone, believers, non-believers, and atheists alike. This inner freedom is guaranteed by Article 18 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. If this inner freedom is not respected, the outer freedoms, freedom of speech, press, assembly, association, will also be endangered. It begins inside each person and is expressed outwardly through acts of faith, family, and community. Internal freedom is absolute and must be fully respected by state and institutions. External expression can be regulated only if restrictions are legal, necessary, and proportionate. I oppose dissolution of the Family Federation from the beginning. I wrote personally to Japan's Prime Minister and Foreign Minister, but so far received no reply. However, opposition abroad is growing. Japan has long been respected as a moderate democracy, but its reputation is now at risk. I hear concerns, shock, and even protests from governments and civil society worldwide. How a country treats minorities, not its majority, is the true measure of its democratic credibility. The UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion or Belief, Nasila Ghania, requested to visit Japan to investigate possible violations of minority rights. Unfortunately, the Japanese government has not allowed her visit. Japan should engage in dialogue with her and with the United Nations. The Family Federation Church appealed against the district court verdict, and the case is now before the Tokyo High Court. There is still hope for a fair and positive judicial resolution. Ladies and gentlemen, even democratic countries are not fully immune against ideologies or abuse of power. Therefore, people, society, must remain vigilant on protection on human dignity of all and human rights for all. Thank you for your attention and support.